All right. So for those who can't make it out to our property, we wanted to give a quick overview and just let you see it. We live outside of Peggs, Oklahoma, a very small town, about a mile out. But so here's a quick overview. There's Highway 82, and here's our front pasture. Grass is coming in nicely here. We try to keep this front pasture fairly open and kind of like a yard for the kids to play in and for people to come park when there's events and want to do make and takes for wild food and all that stuff. So come with me and we'll take a little quick tour of the property. You'll get to see all the different parts and so forth. If you just pan over here real fast, and there's our house. We've got a bunch of mounds in the front yard. Those are called our Hugo beds, where you bury a bunch of wood and it rots and decomposes over time and increases soil fertility and stores water. So we got gardens in the back there and a lot of wild stuff growing out there. Continuing on here, we've got there's our barn. Our chickens basically roost in there at night. Okay. We got a little one talking to us. All right. So the chickens roost in here at night. That's kind of our setup right now. We're building something for the chickens inside the electric fencing, but we'll go from there. All right. Now, as you come around the back here, these two ponds, they were not here when we got our property. We just saw that the water pooled there naturally, and so one of the principles in permaculture is to observe and interact. So we saw that's where the water naturally pools, and so we put a couple ponds there. All right, and we may expand them, but it's just one of those things to move slowly and see how it affects everything around it.
And then our gardens are back over here.
Yep, in this back area, our gardens are there. We got some open space. We see the cows grazing there. We'll talk a little bit about the intensive grazing that we do as we move around to the front. All right, so we'll continue on here. We'll put probably a bridge in between here because it's soggy. But here's our main path going down to the pond. We can go ahead and stop here and just get a quick overview so you see the property. Down here, down the path, we have our main pond. We call it the Rose Pond. And then there's a creek that flows down the back side of the property to a secondary pond, which we call the Frog Pond. And then there's a path that comes back up by the cows there, and then basically to where we are. Now, in the back, there's a lot more wild stuff. That's one of the permaculture principles, which we'll talk about. And then there's a lot of grass, grazing area in the middle, which we intentionally did. It wasn't like this when we got it. It was just completely wild 2 years ago when we got the property. So we're basically doing intensive grazing with our cattle. If you know anything about Joel Salatin or mob stocking grazing,
Alan Savory,
that's what we're doing. And we've seen big improvements in the grass. You can see it's nice and rich and looks fertile, and we're going to try to make it better and better each year. All right, so coming along here, you can pan down to some of the trees here. These are starting to come in. We got these from the Oklahoma Forestry Service. They had a big sale. You could get a bundle of 50 for $45.
35, I think.
$35, something like that. It was very cheap, and so we got a whole bunch of trees. And so we've got fragrant sumac, and we have sand plum, and some other ones that are planted
more shrubby stuff on this side, and then we've got some mid-sized trees on this side, a few of them.
Right. So every 5 to 10 feet, we got some stuff planted, and it makes kind of a natural fence walkway to go along our path. All right. So this here, this is a catalpa tree. Has real broad, big leaves. Right now it's just starting, but it's a very pretty tree. It's got these brownish black pods, real long ones, when it goes to seed.
Yeah, it's in the legume family, so like the bean family.
Yep. So
it's a great shade tree for our cows when they're grazing in this area.
Yes. All right. We got some dogs that like to follow us everywhere. All right, and then right here, this is something you'll see a lot on the property.
This is our main tree, yeah.
This is our main tree. It's an elm tree, yeah. And the leaves kind of look like a potato chip with ridges. But we won't keep all of these, but we have basically a forest of them that are growing down on the bottom side of our property. And we'll use that. We'll coppice the trees If you know anything about that, you cut them at a certain time and then it branches out and they don't get too tall, and you can use it as a renewable source of wood.
So keep growing from that same root stock.
All right. Off on this side, we've got our blackberry forest. This was here when we got here, and so we decided to just, leave it in as is. And so we're going to have to clear out some of the old thorns and whatnot, but it's a nice food source for animals and for wild children who come and like to eat. All right, but no, it's good. We may have to cut a path or two through there because it's kind of hard to get right now. But another thing you see a lot of as we walk through, I'll just show you this, is a rose bush. And so this is wild rose. Here. And it is just starting to bloom. It's real pretty, white and pink flowers. And
this is actually one of the invasive multiflora roses. The native ones have pink flowers.
Yep. And because of it being invasive, we're going to get rid of a lot of them. And that's why we planted some sumac and other bushy stuff. We want to keep it for habitat, but also our rabbits love the leaves, and cows like them too.
And once all the other stuff is kind of gone.
The leaves last after the grasses die down and stuff. So it's a good source of food for some of the animals, the goats. Now over here, you see a lot of grass also.
This is another paddock here.
Yeah, this we use as a paddock for the cows, and it wasn't that way when we came here. It was just wild and full of ragweed and stuff, and there's still plenty of ragweed in there, which will get larger as the season continues, but we try to keep those trimmed back. And then up at the corner there, there's a triangular section of our property where we just planted several rows of trees for a food forest. And so we have black walnut, and we have mulberry and bur oak and a whole number of trees. So we'll keep moving here so we don't run over time here. All right, as we approach the main pond, we have a couple campsites. So we've got a large campsite, could fit 15 people, 20 people. It's a kind of a large tent site, and then a smaller one, a primitive campsite. You can bring your friends, bring a pig.
Hi, Petunia. This is Petunia Pig.
All right, so our oldest son, he just bought 2 American guinea hogs, and we'll keep those. We won't eat them, but they'll be used for our breeding stock, and they'll have a litter of pigs, but they may eat mainly grass, so it's nice.
Yeah, they like our vegetation. This this big campsite, we're hoping at some point to turn into a build site. We're working with a natural builder and trying to get some plans on that. Not sure what the timeline on that'll be, but that's the goal there. So, and then here's the other
campsite, and then a lot of goldenrod in here. This will shoot up, and it'll be like a natural wall right there. There's our other pig.
Oh yeah, there's Hammy.
All right. So here's our neighbor's cows.
Oh, those are the neighbor cows.
They always like to come.
Hi, 14.
Yeah, 14's our favorite one. All right.
Oh, the creek. So here's the seasonal creek that runs into our pond. It's very high right now. It's not normally quite this high. So.
All right. So this right here, we've got a composting toilet in here basically, and so camping out down here, have somewhere to go.
Yeah, we use composting system throughout our whole property, so it's not.
Yep. This right here was a cherry tree that fell in a big storm, and we chopped it up and got some wood from there. All right, this is our main pond, our rose pond, and we've got a couple kayaks, and this is we had to clear all this out here. It wasn't like this when we got here, but this is a great...
it was like what you see on the other banks, just full of roses and stuff.
So this is a nice recreation area for the family on days off, or for a company to come down here and just enjoy themselves.
You can see a little bit right now where the roses are starting to bloom on the edge, but in another week or 2 weeks, it'll just be white blooms all around the pond and pink. So.
Yep. All right. So to follow the path of the water, it comes in to the neighbors on that side, fills up that main pond, and then there's this creek that flows all the way down the back side of the property to the other pond.
514. So if you were to keep walking up this path that Stuart was just by, you want to tell them what's up there?
All right, we just planted about 125 Osage orange trees, and so they're thorny trees, and we'll use that as a fence line. And so we planted them about 18 inches apart all the way up to the front of the property. And so it's a natural fence to keep things out, and also provide a sound barrier to Highway 82.
Yeah. What's the catchphrase? In 4 years you can have a fence that's what?
Yeah, it's like horse high, bull strong, and hog tight.
Yep. So that's a native species for our area too, so that's an ideal one to use that way.
Yep.
Versus an imported evergreen or something.
So you see the flow of the water comes around here. All right, and when things get into the rainy season, we've got to trim this path back every few weeks so it doesn't get overgrown. But once it's established, it stays pretty well. All right. One of the things that we do on our property is take regular walks throughout it to identify all the native plants. Ashley does wild crafting classes and talks about medicinal plants. This year we're focusing a lot on the trees to learn all the trees on our property and what they're useful for. And next year we're going to focus more on grasses, all the different types. Maintain some diversity, but only keep the ones that we really want or think are useful. If you look back in this area here,
sorry, the sun's really bright right there.
Yeah, we can get a different spot here.
Yeah, I can still see. But...
So one of the permaculture principles is to have zones to your property. So where you live, like your house, that's zone 1, or you could call it zone 0, but it radiates out there in kind of like concentric circles out to the edge of your property, where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 would be the very edge of your property. So the wild area, that's going to be zone 5 out here.
So everything on the other side of our creek, you
Yeah.
follow the creek along.
Yep. So we keep that wild area there to maintain plant and animal diversity on the property, and that way predators won't think they need to come up to our property and eat our chickens or whatever else we don't want them eating.
There's an ethic in permaculture, fair share. So we're giving the wild animals their fair share, and we have our fair share area too. We will, there's a Bradford pear that shot up right there. We'll be cutting down some of the invasives, but we won't be planting or harvesting in that area. It's just for the animals primarily.
Right.
Wild animals, I mean, not our animals.
Right. So we've cut down a lot of those Bradford pears, and then we'll also get rid of a lot of those multiflora roses.
Yeah.
So coming up here,
You can see, all the elms, yeah.
Yeah, we've got tons of elm trees, and we're going to thin these out, and then the ones that do really well, and once we get the right spacing, then those are the ones that we're going to coppice for our wood forest, basically.
Yeah, so for poles and chipping and hugelkultur and all sorts of things that we need that renewable source of wood for. There's a beautiful willow tree right there. And then these are our persimmons.
Yep, and so we got a little landing over here where we got persimmon trees, and if you've never had persimmon fruit, it's really good or it's really bad. You have to get it at just the right time, otherwise it's really astringent and dries up your mouth and it tastes horrible. But if you get it at the right time,
after it passes that point, you have a little while.
But
yeah,
when it's ripe, they're really good. And so they have wet feet, so the roots are there in the creek, and they pop up around our ponds and along the creek.
So yeah, I said this before, a different time, but we read and watch a lot of videos and stuff and learn that way, but one of our biggest teachers is watching and learning our land, like Stuart was saying, walking around. And we see where the persimmons grow, so that's where we have planted more along the creek and stuff too. So.
Yep. So where we are, we get really pretty sunsets too. Right now it hasn't turned, all orange and red and stuff, but we have awesome views from our house because it's situated a little higher up there. but we want to keep it that way, so we don't want the trees that grow down here to get too tall. You know, things change over time, I get that too, but that's just what we're thinking right now.
So, yeah, we've walked along the creek. It's a little bit further over there. It's kind of hard to see, sorry, because of the sun, but that feeds into this other pond. And then we're coming up on the other pond up here.
All right. So this is our frog pond, named for the very noisy frogs that, you know, are down here in the evenings. So this pond, it can dry out in the drier months, and you can walk across the bottom of it. But after it rains and stuff, it'll stay filled for a while. And we have some beavers that built a dam on the opposite side not too long back, and kind of
see the tree right
basically
there.
like doubled the area of this pond. And so
we've pulled some of the debris from that out of there, but we're going to leave that tree over there just as a visual representation of what beavers can do. It's fun to show kids and adults when they come on field trips and stuff. You know, you can see the beaver teeth marks and all that. So should we walk over here and see the pond from this direction, or?
all right. So all right.
So you can see it a little bit better here too.
So there's a lot of plants that'll grow along here. We'll get violet and self-heal. There's some really good medicinal plants that grow along this one.
So here it is from a different way. You can see the dam where it goes, it dams and then it exits our property. So.
Yep. All right, we got one last path to walk up here, and we'll get to visit our cows. We talk just real briefly about the grazing that we do, and make our way back up by our gardens, and then that kind of wraps it up. We also planted our trees along here as well, and so there's some trees just starting to bud out.
Yeah, some dogwood.
Yep. So those will come up over the years and kind of line out this path also.
And this area here where the cows are grazing right now, actually we want this to be our orchard for our house with all of our fruit trees.
Yep.
You can hear the baby goats.
So we kind of got some fencing across the path here. This one, the electric fencing is not on right now because we have two sets. We have two paddocks. And the cows are in this one over here. But
there's Joe Bob and Marigold and Bubby, the baby. I don't know if you can see Bubby. There he is.
Yeah. And so, if you've ever read it or heard anything about intensive grazing or heard of Joel Salatin or Alan Savory, basically they advocate a system of grazing where you move the cows through the field in paddocks, and there's a whole number of benefits for it. I do a class on it, but the main things are it increases carbon in the soil, and also it just enriches the grasses over time, and there's a lot of reasons for how that works, but we've seen big benefits for it just in the 1 year that we've had the electric fencing.
Yep.
So we've got some healthy grasses, and we want to continue it that way.
Oh, these goats want us to feed them. Hi, baby goats.
So here's Twinkle, and then we have Snowball and Snowflake. All right, that's Snowflake right there.
Yeah.
But right now, nothing is really in this fencing except the goats. We're gonna build a chicken enclosure, and then so they can get away from predators, and then keep the chickens in the electric fencing also. That way they stay out of our gardens and other things that we don't want them in, because they will get into anything.
So that kind of brings us back to the end now. We're back.
Yeah. So, yeah, back up to where we got our gardens. But that's just a quick overview. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, if you haven't made it out here, you know, we do classes and we do tours, and we talk in a lot more detail about what we do and why we do it. And, you know, there's a lot to learn for us and for anybody who comes out. So, yeah, thanks for watching.
Yep, thanks. I'll try to get in here.
There's Ashley. All right.